Hi, everyone. In this video, I want to talk to you about demand. Okay. So, in chapter 3, we basically talk about a specific market, perfect competition market. Remember that this market is huge. We have lots of buyers and sellers in this market. And we basically, in chapter 3, try to define demand and supply in this market. Okay. Um, to start basically defining demand, let's just talk about an example. Let's say you want to buy few apples, okay? Few apples. I apologize for my handwriting here, um, but I just tried to write everything down for you. So let's say you want to buy a few apples, okay? Let's say you want to buy um, 3 apples, okay? That's how many apples you want to purchase. What are the factors that you are going to consider when you want to buy apples, okay? So we all have the list of things in mind when we go grocery shopping, when we want to buy a pair of shoes, when we want to buy different goods and services for ourselves, all right? So one thing that we all consider, and you can also answer my question, the first thing probably we check is the price, right? What is the price? How much does it cost for me to buy 3 apples? What is the cost of 1 apple? Or what is the cost of 1 pound of apple? I also look into the money that I have, right, in my pocket. So I also check my income. I consider my budget, my income when I go grocery shopping. I also consider if my kids and I and my husband like apple or not. I consider our preferences and our tastes. I also consider my alternatives for apples. I also consider the price of, let's say, pears or the price of, let's say, oranges. So I also consider the price of related goods. I also, as a buyer, um, related goods. I also consider um, future. What is my expectations about future price of apple? Should I wait and buy the apples next week because it might be cheaper, or should I just buy it right now because it is less expensive? So expect expectations, okay? Um, I also consider my future money. Okay, is it at the beginning of the month that I'm going grocery shopping? Is it towards the end of the month? Should I wait and get my paycheck? Um, am I going to expect that my income will go up in the future or not? Maybe I should save if my income is going down, or maybe I should spend more because I know that I have a huge raise in the future. So these are some of the factors that we consider when we go and buy a pound of apple. Okay, let's say that pound is just 3 apples. We have, of course, many things that you might also add to this list. You might say, okay, I consider the quality of apples. Yeah, that's another factor we can include. You might say, okay, I care about the color of the apple or the type of apple that I buy. So there are many, many different things that we consider when it comes to buying different goods and services. These are few things that we consider that, and we probably say that these are the most important things that we consider when we want to buy a pound of apple. Um, and remember, our goal here is to define demand. So to do that, I am going to remember we make assumptions in economics. So since price is one of the most important factors that we consider when it comes to buying different goods and services, I'm going to put price in one category, and then I'm going to put all these other factors in another category. And I'm going to keep all these other factors for now fixed. So I like apples. My kids love apples. I have the money. I really don't care about the related goods. I really don't have any type of expectations about future. I like any type of apple. I don't care about the color of the apple that I buy. So all these other factors that might impact my purchasing plans are all fixed. The only thing that I consider when it comes to buy apples is just the price. And of course, later on, we will look into all these other factors. But remember, we're defining our demand. So, um, when it comes to demand, basically we have different ways that we can define demand. But let me just go into one more thing, one more kind of definition that we have that it's important here, or the concept that it's important here. We like to distinguish in chapter 3, we will also talk about supply, right? But we like to distinguish between the quantity of goods and services that buyers buy, which is called quantity demanded, with the quantity of goods and services that suppliers sell. We call them quantity supplied. So basically, demand shows the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. Okay. So if we can figure out the relationship between price of apple and the number of apples that we buy. So remember, quantity demanded is nothing but the quantity of goods and services that we buy. So if we can figure out the relationship between price and quantity demanded of different goods and services that we buy, we have a demand. We have a definition for demand, and we're all consumers, so we're all familiar with this relationship that I'm talking about. Okay, so the easiest way that we can define demand is to figure out the relationship between price and quantity demanded, the number of goods and services that buyers want to buy. So, as I said, we are, of course, all um, buyers, right? So we all know this relationship between price, right? So what will happen to the number of apples that you want to purchase if they become more expensive? Price increases, what will happen to the quantity demanded or the number of apples that you buy? Exactly, it will go down. When something is expensive, you buy less. And remember, we're keeping other factors here fixed. And vice versa, right? So what will happen to the number of apples that you want to buy when they become cheaper? Correct. The quantity demanded or the number of apples will go up. So there is an inverse relationship, opposite relationship, negative relationship between price and quantity demanded, right? If something is more expensive, you buy less. If something is less expensive, you buy more. So remember, we were looking for finding the relationship between price and quantity demanded because that's how we define demand. That's the easiest way that you can find demand. We call this inverse or negative relationship between price and quantity demanded law of demand. So one way to define demand is basically showing the relationship between, so demand's job is to show us the relationship between price and quantity demanded when other factors remain the same. Also, remember that demand shows our purchasing plans. It also shows how much the consumers are willing to pay for something, for a pound of apple. These are different ways that we can define demand, okay? Let me also show you how we draw demand. So when we want to draw demand, again, remember that other factors so far, they were all fixed. We're focused on price. We saw that how changing price will impact the number of apples that we buy or the quantity demanded. So now let's say I want to draw my demand and I want to have some numbers here to play with. So let's say when the price of apple is 1, I buy 10 apples. When the price goes up to 3, It is expensive for me, so quantity demanded will go down. So I'm going to buy only 8. If the price goes up to 5, it's really, really expensive. My kids still love the apples, right? So it is expensive, but I want to buy some apples. So, but it is really, really expensive. So I probably only buy 2. And when it comes 7, the price I probably buy 0. So as you can see, we can see that inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded also here, which is law of demand. Now I want to figure out the shape of my demand. Remember, we love to visualize things in economics, and we draw lots of graphs actually in economics. So um, this is the rule of thumb. Whenever we draw demand and supply, the price always goes on the y-axis, and then your quantity, either quantity demanded or quantity supplied, will go on the x. So now I have different numbers for my price. Let me just put them on my y-axis. I have 3, I have 5, and then I have 7. And I have also different quantities. I have 2, I have 8, and I have 10. And of course, I have 0, which is right here. So I want to figure out the shape of my demand. So I have to find all these points. Let me call this point A, B, C, and then D. If price is 1, I'm going to buy only 1 apple because it was very, very expensive. So this is my point A. When price, sorry, it was very, very cheap, so I bought a lot. When price was $3, I buy 8 apples. It is expensive, right, compared to the time that it was 1. So I cut back my my purchases by 2. When the price is a 5, I'm up here, I only buy 2 because it's really, really expensive. So this is my point C. And when it's $7, I cannot afford it. So it's 0. So I have 4 points here. If I connect all these points, I can get my demand curve. Remember, we can have actually a linear demand when demand is a straight line, or we can have a demand curve when we have a nonlinear demand. Most of the time, of course, for our class, we use a linear straight line for demand. It is possible, and it is actually more realistic to have a demand curve, okay? So our demand curve, as you can see, is downward slope, showing once again the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Price is going down, I'm buying more. Price is going up, I am buying less. So once again, you can see that inverse relationship between price and quantity. Let me change the color now. So remember, we are focused on price for now, right? So if price goes down, let's say from $7 to 5, remember that your quantity is changing here. So price is 7 and now it's cheaper. So the quantity is going up by 2, right? Basically, we are moving from point D to point C on the very same demand curve, right? So whenever basically your price changes, there is a movement along the demand. And this is probably the most confusing part about demand and quantity demanded. So I want you just to be focused here. So if price goes down, your quantity demanded is going up by 2. So you are moving from one point to another point, from point D to point C on the very same demand curve. Now let's talk about the other factors that we kept them fixed, like your income. So all those other factors can shift your demand. So if your income changes, your expectations, the price of related goods, and so forth, you are no longer on this demand. You are going to end up with a new demand curve. for any reason that we will discuss, our demand increases, I'm not talking about quantity demanded. Remember, quantity demanded is going to change only when you change the price. And remember that quantity demanded is just one number. Quantity demanded is just one point on your demand curve. If quantity is if quantity is 8, price is 3. So this point B is just representing basically your quantity demanded. So it's just one number quantity demanded, 1 point on the demand curve. Demand, however, is the list of different prices and different quantities, okay? This whole thing is demand. So that's the difference between demand and quantity demanded, okay? So if price changes, your quantity is just changing. But if anything other than your price changes, like income, expectations, all those other things that we had, we are going actually to end up with a completely new demand curve. So let's say our demand for now is called D1. I have a downward slope demand. I'm calling it D1. If anything other than price changes, we are no longer on demand, right? If price changes, we're just moving from one point to another point, point A to point B on the very same D1. But if income changes, expectations, taste or preferences, price of related goods, a number of buyers, that was another thing that I missed. Number of buyers changes. We're no longer on D1. We are ending up with a new demand curve. If for any reason our demand increases, we are going to shift our demand curve to the right-hand side of D1. So we have a new demand curve. I'm calling it D2. So remember, D2 represents increase in demand. And if for any reason demand decreases, we are shifting our demand to the left-hand side of D1. I'm calling this new demand D3. So D3 represents decrease in demand. So now let's talk about the factors that can shift our demand in more detail. So I forgot to add actually number of buyers in my list that I discussed at the beginning. So number of buyers is one of the factors that can shift. We also call them shifters, determinants of demand. So number of buyers is one of them. So if we have more buyers in the market, demand will increase. We have more buyers in the market, let's say for apples. So we are going to have a huge shift, rightward shift in our demand. So at the beginning of COVID, there was a huge increase in the demand for toilet papers because we had lots of buyers in the market. So the number of buyers impacted our demand. So if we have more buyers, we'll end up with D2 increase in demand or rightward shift in demand. If the number of buyers decreases, we have a leftward shift in demand. Another factor that can impact our demand is income. When it comes to income, we should talk a little bit about two types of good we have. We have normal goods. So the majority of goods that we know are normal. So if you have more income, if you have more money, you purchase more normal goods. In the other word, your demand for normal goods will increase. So again, we have a rightward shift for demand. If your income decreases, your demand for normal goods will go down. So we have a leftward shift in demand. So most of the goods that we know are normal. Coffee, shoes, apples, they're all normal goods. But we also have, when it comes to income, another type of good that are called inferior. Inferior goods are those goods that if you have more money, you buy less of them, and vice versa. If your income decreases, your demand for inferior goods will increase. So Let me give you an example. So inferior goods, again, remember when we talk about these shifters or the factors that can change our demand, shift our demand, we're focused on one factor at a time. We don't want to change the number of buyers and income at the same time. We're just, when we talk about income, we're just focused on income, okay? We keep other factors fixed. So a good example for inferior goods is used clothing. So if you have more money, if your income increases, your demand for used clothing will go down because you can afford buying a brand new clothes, brand new shoes. If your income decreases, your income for used clothing as an inferior goods will increase. So we have a rightward shift here in our demand. Another classic example for inferior good is ramen noodle. So we're not talking about that we love ramen noodle, but we're talking about the fact that if you have, or mac and cheese, another inferior good. My kids love mac and cheese, but it's just an example. Remember, if I have more income, instead of feeding my kids mac and cheese every night, I can afford buying other things, right? I can buy steak for them. I can take them out. We can eat out. So if my money increases, if my income increases, my demand for mac and cheese or ramen noodles will go down, and vice versa. So I think you got the idea for inferior goods. Another factor that we have is price of related goods, and I'm not following the same kind of the order of the list that I wrote. I'm just going as I, as I think that I can explain everything. So price of related goods. So we have two types of related goods that are also shifters that can change or shift our demand. So in the example of apple, I talked about apples and pears or apples and oranges. So instead of buying apple, sometimes I can buy pears because apples and pears are substitutes. So we have two types of substitute. So we have two types of related goods. Substitute goods. And so substitute goods, let me first explain that. So substitute goods are those goods that you can replace one with another. You can replace apples with oranges, apples with pears, coffee with tea. Again, remember, we're not talking about preferences. We're keeping all the other factors fixed. So when price of apple changes, your demand for pears will change. If price of coffee changes, your demand for tea will change because they are related. We also have another type of related goods, which is called, again, I apologize for my handwriting, complementary goods. Complementary goods are those goods that you always buy them together. You never drink your coffee without milk. You never have your pizza without soda. So coffee cream, coffee sugar, hot dog bun, pizza, soda, they're all complementary goods. So complementary goods are those goods that you always consume together. Again, if price of pizza changes, my demand for soda will change, okay? So let me just give you an example here. Let's say we're talking about coffee and tea. So if coffee becomes more expensive, because tea and coffee are a substitute, my demand for tea automatically will go up, right? So in another market for tea, we have a rightward shift in the demand for tea. And of course, you can always think about the opposite. So if coffee becomes less expensive, demand for tea will go down. For complementary goods, let's say I never drink my coffee without cream. So if coffee becomes more expensive, my demand for cream as a complementary good for coffee will go down. Coffee is more expensive. I automatically drink less coffee, so my demand for cream will go down. And again, you can think about the time that we have a decline in demand, and it will be the opposite. We also have taste or preferences as another example that can shift our demand. So taste preferences is really easy. If you like something, your demand for that product will go up. So if I like Apple, everybody in the market like Apple, demand in the market will increase, will shift to the right. If nobody likes apples, if people change their their mind about apples, their demand for apples actually will go down. So we have a leftward shift in demand. And last factors that we have here is expectations. Expectations is another shifter. Expectations. Expectations can also shift our demand. If we are expecting that future price is going to change, the decisions that we make right away will change. Okay, so our demand actually will change for the products that we were planning to purchase. So let's say you want to buy a brand new TV for your home. So if you are expecting that the price of this TV will go up in the future because we are dealing with inflation, so you are expecting that there would be a rise in the prices in the future. And remember, we're talking about making all the other factors fixed. So you are actually going to buy that TV right now, today, because if you wait, you are going to pay more. So your demand today for that TV will increase. We have a rightward shift in demand. But if you are expecting that the price in the future will go down, let's say it's close to holidays, Thanksgiving is coming up, Black Friday sales, Cyber Monday. So you're expecting that the price of that TV will go down in the future. You are going to wait, won't you? You are going to wait a little bit for the market to change. You know that it will be less expensive in the future. So your demand today will go down because you are going to wait and take the advantage of lower prices in the future. So your demand today will shift leftward. Remember, at the beginning, I told you if price changes, there is no shift. You're moving from A to B. You're moving from one point to another point on the same demand. But I already talked about price here, right? Future prices. I also talked about price of related goods. So when it comes to tests, when it comes to assignments, pay attention which price we are talking about. Is the question talking about future prices? If yes, there is a shift in demand. If the price is talking about price of substitute and complementary, there will be a shift in demand. But if we're talking about the price of Apple and the market for Apple, and we're talking about right now, we're not talking about future, there is no shift in demand. So try to be careful about which type of price we're talking about, okay? So guys, definitely review the shifters, determinants of demand. These are the factors that can shift our demand, and also review the definition of demand that we had. I hope that you find this video helpful. I tried to keep it short, but I am going to make also another video on supply. So follow that. Till next time.